Okay. So, this is kind of nuts of Knowles to say. He just got done saying liberal women are not marriageable. Right? If he has that stance and he's saying do not marry women who are liberals or progressives, period, then basically he has to make the claim that most women are not marriageable. Just look at the voting patterns of women, right? Look at the voting patterns of women. Most of them vote and lean towards the progressive ideology. So he kind of has to admit that most of them are not marriageable by his own logic.
70% of women. Sometimes I think you guys are so out of touch.
I don't think
like
it's a disqualifier.
70%. You want a fat wife? It's like, come on, no, guys. This is what you're telling men to sign up for.
What I'm telling them. I guess what I'm.
And that's my point. It's not the majority. And when is the last time you dated? Like 10 years. You've been married for a while. So sometimes you talk, and I just think you're a bit out of touch with.
You're saying I'm okay. Market. No, that's fair. You're saying
because
I never swiped. I never did any of these things.
Correct. And I'm saying I've interviewed 1,000 women. I could give you examples in real life too. I mean, that's a ton of people, Michael.
Sure.
So,
sure. I have no doubt that the dating pool is difficult now. But the
problem is that the state is the legal enforcement arm.
Well, that's by definition.
Correct. So there's no way for a man to get married in 2024.
That's not by definition always true.
24 without being entered into the state contract.
But that's always
that has not always been true.
I understand, but I understand men's hesitation when the quality of.
Why is he saying that? That has not always been true.
Women has gone down.
But what if,
I don't tell men not to get married or like what to do. I think every man has to decide for themselves. But I don't think you're going to win a lot of support, or I think you have to understand the problem in order to come up with a solution.
So you are telling men at the very least, you're observing that it is not advisable today in 2024 to get married.
I would say that every man has to pick for himself. But I think objectively, if me and you sign a contract and one of us is paid to leave, you would never sign that business deal. You would never sign it.
I did, right. If you're saying that's the state of marriage now, I did get married, therefore I did sign it.
Okay, well, congrats.
Isn't that a dunk on himself?
Congratulations, but I think a lot of men are going to be hesitant to do that.
And you're saying it's rational for them to be hesitant?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're saying it's advisable?
No, not advisable.
But
I'll make the claim. Because Pearl doesn't want to commit to that. In the year 2024, for most men, over 50%, it is not advisable to enter into a marriage contract. I'll just state it plainly. It is not advisable for most men in the year 2024 to enter into a marriage contract. It's not a good idea. That's why this guy should be promoting covenant marriage.
Every man, I'll give you an example. I'm not here. I think men have had enough of women telling them what to do. I'm not telling men to do anything. But I think your situation is going to be completely different than the average Joe making $45,000 a year. If your marriage goes south, you have the money to afford lawyers.
I have the money, but I'm going to lose half money.
What?
But
do you think you're in the same position as the average man making $45,000 a year? The answer is no. The answer is no.
I don't think it's because of my money, though. You know what I think it's because, look, when I got married, I didn't have a lot of money, but now I have more money. But I think there's a bigger distinction here, which is I am of a religious view and practice that does not recognize the reality of divorce. Not only do we discourage it, I'm a mackerel-snapping papist, a member of the Catholic faith.
I'm Catholic, too.
Why you make fun of Catholics all the time, Andrew? Because of the insane shit that this guy is saying right now.
You're Catholic also?
I'm also Catholic.
So, marvelous news. Yeah. We do not...
And Catholics are not immune to divorce. I have seen it. I've seen people getting married for the second time.
Yeah, but we just pretend it never happened. We just pretend that it never happened. We pretend that our 12 kids and marriage that we had for 20 years just never happened.
They'll get communion, and the number of annulments is going up.
That's not licit.
I know, but it doesn't matter because it happens all the time.
But you can,
and so
totally. I see someone who calls himself.
We have a record number of annulments this year in the Catholic Church. You cannot. The Catholic Church is getting more. You see the Pope, and I think we could agree on this stuff.
The Pope for all of the liberal statements that have appeared in the press under his name. The Pope is generally pretty good on matters of sex and marriage.
What? What? He's what? The guy who was like, yeah, go bless the gay marriage. Really? Okay. Okay. I mean, I feel like this guy's racking up his own L's here.
He's pretty clear. When you say
he's not really pretty clear. Okay, not really very clear.
Catholics get divorced. It has happened. There's a distinction between an annulment.
It's around. I looked it up before this. It's around 25, 35.
So that's how. Yeah,
it's around. Yeah, it's around 35%. And so that's not a small percentage.
What's the national average? Like 45% roughly. So
2024 it was 50.
Okay,
so I know everyone splits hairs over like the 5-10%, but regardless, it's not small.
So what that means then is that if you're a man, and I totally grant that dating pool's tough and the economy's tough and the divorce courts are terrible and divorce laws are terrible,
but they should sign up anyway.
Well, yeah, no. Before we even get to that,
okay.
Before we get to that, one way to mitigate one's risk in marriage of divorce would be to be just any old Catholic, right? Because you then reduce the likelihood of divorce by 16% immediately.
Big problem with this argument. Yes, you may mitigate the risk of divorce by, 15% is pretty substantial, okay? Still pretty high. Okay? But, yes, it does seem like it will maybe mitigate divorce. But it doesn't actually do anything for the mass quantity of men who are going through divorce, who are Catholic, and who are having the same type of kind of outcome that people who are not Catholic having. Why does Knowles endorse state marriage to begin with? Like, why is that? I don't get it. Why does he even care? If you're making because you're Catholic, it's better, why do they need to still sign the state contract?
16 percentage points, much more than 16% from the 50% number. So then, what if you're Muslim?
Okay.
Divorce rates among Muslims, even a little lower, 30%. Okay. Divorce rates among Orthodox Jews, 30, as low. There's a lot of different kind of Jews, but it goes down to as low as 10. And then you get down to a little more of the old school Catholics, which is kind of how I practice. There aren't great numbers on it.
Do you go to Latin Mass?
Traditional Latin Mass. Okay. Like.
Yeah. That's a lot of patience.
But frankly, I find it.
No, it's good. It's good. Latin Mass is a little better.
It seems like it goes faster than the shorter.
No, it's a little bit better in the Latin Mass. I'd agree.
But when it comes to divorce, the numbers are a little sparse here. It's like 5 to maybe 10%.
But the problem is with most of those stats. One, most of those studies were done before social media. Anyone that dated before and after social media knows it completely changed the game.
Good point.
How do you mean?
Well,
what the hell does he mean? How do you mean?
Women now have access to men anywhere. And cheating goes dating. The number one way people are meeting under 30 is dating apps.
Yep.
This is a completely different dating marketplace than when you were dating.
Though I guess,
and that's my point.
When I was dating,
there's no Catholic woman in divorce court. Women will throw out their religion very, very fast when they want to leave. You cannot pray a woman that wants to leave you into not leaving you.
I think you don't the statistics I just cited show that you can?
No. They don't.
No, but the problem
they would actually affirm Pearl's point. The religion acts as a buffer, and that possibly due to the environmental factors, she does not want to leave you. But that does not mean that just you deciding, well, I'm going to pray really hard and hopefully she doesn't leave if she wants to, probably not going to work.
With those is they include women over a certain age. The women under the age of 35
You're saying
have been on, so yes, it's completely different.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think you can't really deny it with what you've seen. You go on whatever podcast. Are those the same women of our grandmothers and great-grandmothers? No, it's completely different.
There's not a ton of Orthodox Jews and traditional Catholics on that podcast, but and perhaps there's a reason for that.
And you got to ask like the reputation. What's the reputation?
Wait, what did he just say?
You've seen, you go on whatever podcast. Are those the same women of our grandmothers and great-grandmothers? No, it's completely different.
There's not a ton of Orthodox Jews and traditional Catholics on that podcast, but
so many people on that podcast identify as being that way. Yes. Many of them identify as being traditional Catholics who are not. Traditional Jews who are not. This is affirming Pearl's stance. Just because they identify that way, you don't see them that way because you don't believe that they are.
But and perhaps there's a reason for that.
And you got to ask like the reputation. What's the reputation of Catholic girls?
Well, what do you mean? I mean, again,
that's my point. My point is they have if there was an abundance of wives in church, Michael, the men would be lining up to go.
But they do. The traditional churches.
Men are leaving the church.
If Catholic, would you convert because of the Pope? I could have converted to Catholicism anyway. I chose not to. Remember, I'm Orthodox. I can go to any Catholic church and take communion. They just can't come to our church and take communion. We don't consider them to be part of the actual Catholic Church. And so, no, I would not. I'll never convert to anything from Orthodoxy, ever. Never.
Under the age of 35, young men, church participation is going down altogether, but young men are leaving the church.
But what about the traditional parishes?
The traditional parishes...
They're exploding, and it's all...
Yes, they are. He's right about that.
All young people. I mean, the median age is like 22 in these parishes. Mm-hmm. And it's largely young men. So I totally grant you that a lot of modern religion has become quite effeminate and has driven men away.
Right, but I'm saying the Catholic Church is not exempt. It's absolutely not exempt. I've seen a lot of the same trends in the Catholic Church.
I guess...
Doesn't Tom Hanks identify as being Orthodox? Orthodox what?
My confusion is, though, you bring up these statistics, and so then we acknowledge the statistics that show that if one gets married, assuming that divorce is not a sacramental reality, that the likelihood of divorce goes way down. But then when we say that, you instantly say, well, actually now the statistics aren't worth anything because young people are different.
Wait, say that again? Sorry.
So
wait.
We agree that the numbers for Catholics, Jews, Muslims, Orthodox Jews and Muslims, divorce numbers are way lower. And you acknowledge those statistics, but they...
Not way lower.
No, I don't. No, I don't.
You don't? Okay. All right.
No, because most of those include women over a certain age.
Right. You're saying the young people, it's totally different.
Time, Michael.
So what is...
And that's the same thing. Like the time my parents got married in is completely different.
So what changed? Other than now they have so they meet on apps rather than at bars, and that's the big change. That's why we can't believe the statistics anymore.
Well, the average marriage is 7 years now, Michael.
Right, but we've had divorce, expanded divorce for a long time.
And what's happened to the rate since we've had it, Mr. Knowles? Has it gone down or has it gone up?
Had no-fault divorce in America since 1969. So,
and what's that done for divorce?
I acknowledge these are, by historical standards, relatively novel, but we're still talking like 50 years, right?
Not a long time.
More than 50 years.
I don't, I just think a lot of times I hear you guys' advice to go to church and find a good woman. And I don't necessarily think it's bad advice in general. But again, I think that times have changed. And I think a lot of times you guys are a bit out of touch with what the average man is going through in this country.
Well, what do you mean by the average man, I guess. Men come in all shapes and sizes. So
let's get into the particulars. Okay. The men of average height who make an average wage, right? All these things are tracked by the way we can determine them. What's the average wage for men, the average height for men, what's the average, home size for men, blah, 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 blah. Whatever falls under that category, they're having a real fucking hard time. That's what she means by that.
Acknowledging the fears of the modern...
Do you think men have valid fears in getting married? Do you think any of it's valid, or do you think they're making it up?
Yeah, I think that marriage entails risk.
Okay.
But there are ways to mitigate risk.
There are
it's
ways.
A natural institution.
Correct. There are ways to mitigate risk.
Yeah.
But
what even is normal? What does that even mean? I hate that shit.
Because I don't know, when you talk about this stuff, you guys are just sorry, I don't mean to say you guys, but
please, generalize. It's okay.
But sometimes I'm just like...
Now, listen, I do want to answer this question on Hungary, but you'll have to send it in the form of a super chat because I'm raising cash.
How do you not see where the men are coming from? I've talked to men that did the exact same thing. That they took you guys' advice to a T.
What's our advice? Our advice is just
to marry. I've seen a lot of stuff from the Daily Wire.
Yeah.
Okay, might be you, might be other guys that say get married young, right?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay, but I'll see guys that take you guys' advice, and sometimes it ruins their...
Okay, all right, Stephen. I notice your comment here. Let me refute what you're saying real quick. Marriage is a gift from God. Saying don't get married is going against God. Okay. Would you advise that Satanists get married in a satanic wedding where they cut open a goat and do a sacrament to the devil? Would you recommend that, Stephen? I mean, it's marriage, right? Would you recommend that they do that and that it's actually against God for them not to do that? Go ahead, Stephen. I'll wait for your answer here. Would you recommend that Satanists do a black sacrament, underground marriage? Because otherwise it goes against God. Would you recommend it? Would you, Stephen? Join us over at the Crucible.video. Crucible.video, become a member over there. $15 a month for access to it all.